Your life is not changing because of one big decision. It is changing because of thousands of small ones you barely notice. Every morning you wake up, every promise you keep, every excuse you reject, every distraction you ignore. These are the moments building your future. Success is never sudden. Failure is never sudden either. Both are the compound effect of daily discipline. If you learn to master today's ordinary actions, tomorrow will become extraordinary without needing luck, talent, or perfect timing. This book will teach you how. Chapter 1. Stop. Waiting for big changes. Most people spend their lives waiting for one moment that will change everything. The perfect opportunity, the perfect job, the perfect mentor, the perfect idea, the perfect Monday. They believe success arrives like lightning. Fast, dramatic, impossible to miss. It doesn't. Real transformation is almost invisible while it is happening. That's the mistake. You overestimate dramatic breakthroughs and you underestimate ordinary discipline. You believe your future depends on one giant decision. In reality, it depends on thousands of tiny ones. That is why so many people become frustrated. They expect massive results from inconsistent behavior. They look at successful people and imagine there must have been one defining moment that separated them from everyone else. There wasn't. There were ordinary mornings, ordinary afternoons, ordinary evenings, repeated, again, and again, and again. Small actions become massive outcomes. Remember that sentence. Repeat it every day. Small actions become massive outcomes. Imagine two people beginning life from almost the same place. They have similar intelligence, similar education, similar opportunities. Neither has extraordinary talent. Neither has extraordinary luck. On the first day, there is almost no difference between them. One chooses to read 10 pages every night. The other watches another hour of meaningless entertainment. One decides to wake up 30 minutes earlier. The other presses the snooze button. One saves a small percentage of every paycheck. The other spends everything immediately. None of these decisions seem important. Not today, not tomorrow, not next week. But after 1 year, the gap begins to appear. After 5 years, the difference becomes obvious. After 10 years, they appear to have lived completely different lives. People call one person lucky. They call the other unfortunate. But luck was never the deciding factor. Daily discipline was. The compound effect had been working quietly the entire time. That's the key. Life rarely changes overnight. It changes one ordinary decision at a time. You have a choice. Every single day, every hour, sometimes every minute. Not every decision feels important. That is exactly why they are dangerous. Small decisions hide behind their simplicity. They whisper, "This doesn't matter. Skip today. You deserve a break. You can start tomorrow." Those whispers become habits. Habits become identity. Identity becomes destiny. That is how ordinary people slowly build extraordinary lives or slowly destroy them. Small actions become massive outcomes. Never forget that. Every disciplined action is a vote for the person you are becoming. Every excuse is also a vote. There are no neutral decisions. Everything counts. Now think beyond achievement. Think about your health. Nobody becomes healthy because of one workout. Nobody becomes unhealthy because of one meal. Health compounds. One walk. One workout. One nutritious meal. One good night's sleep. Repeated hundreds of times. The body responds to consistency. Now think about money. Very few people become financially secure because of one paycheck. Wealth grows through repeated intelligent decisions. Saving, investing, learning, avoiding unnecessary debt. Repeated over years, money compounds exactly the way habits do. Now think about confidence. Most people believe confidence appears first. It doesn't. Confidence follows evidence. Every promise you keep to yourself becomes evidence. Every difficult task you complete becomes evidence. Every uncomfortable conversation you face becomes evidence. Eventually, your mind reaches one conclusion: I can trust myself. Confidence is not built in one heroic moment. It is built when kept promise at a time. Relationships work the same way. Trust does not appear after one kind conversation. Trust grows from consistency. Listening, showing up, keeping your word, being present. Small moments repeated over time. Character develops exactly the same way. Nobody wakes up disciplined. Nobody wakes up courageous. Nobody wakes up resilient. Character compounds. Every difficult choice strengthens it. Every easy excuse weakens it. That is why today's choices become tomorrow's reality. Repeat it. Today's choices become tomorrow's reality. If today's choices build tomorrow, then today matters far more than most people realize. Not because today is dramatic, because today is ordinary. Ordinary days create extraordinary lives. Most people only become serious when life becomes painful. When the doctor delivers bad news, when money runs out, when relationships collapse, when opportunities disappear. But discipline teaches a different lesson. Do not wait for pain to force change. Choose change before pain arrives. You have a choice. That choice exists before every action, before every purchase, before every meal, before every workout, before every complaint, before every distraction. The future is asking one question over and over again. What will you repeat today? Because repetition is the real architect of your life. You don't need motivation. You need repetition. You don't need perfect circumstances. You need consistency. It's not about intensity. It's about discipline. That's the key. Many people fail because they chase excitement instead of systems. Excitement fades. Systems remain. Motivation disappears. Habits continue. Feelings change. Discipline survives. The strongest people understand something most others ignore. They stop asking whether today's effort will produce immediate results. Instead, they ask a better question. What kind of person am I becoming by doing this today? That question changes everything, because identity grows from repeated action, not repeated intention. Everyone intends to improve. Far fewer repeatedly act. The compound effect does not reward intentions. It rewards behavior. Repeated behavior. This is the central law of everything you will learn in this audiobook. Discipline compounds whether you notice it or not, whether you believe in it or not, whether you feel motivated or not, whether you're watching the clock or not. Every action enters the account. Every excuse enters the account. Every disciplined decision earns interest. Every neglected responsibility also earns interest. You cannot pause this process. You cannot negotiate with it. You cannot escape it. You can only decide which direction it moves. Toward growth or toward decline. There is no standing still. That's the key. Every day either builds your future or quietly steals it. Every repetition strengthens something. The only question is what you are strengthening: your discipline, or your excuses, your confidence, or your doubt, your future, or your regret. The future is already under construction. Say it again. The future is already under construction. Look at your daily habits, and you are looking at tomorrow's life. Look at today's routines, and you are looking at next year's opportunities. Nothing appears suddenly. Everything compounds. The beautiful truth is that this law works for everyone. You do not need extraordinary talent. You do not need perfect genetics. You do not need permission. You only need today's decision. Then tomorrow's. Then the next one. That is how lives change. One ordinary day at a time. One repeated choice at a time. One disciplined action at a time. The compound effect has already begun. Now your responsibility is to make sure it begins working for you instead of against you. You have stopped waiting for big changes. Now it's time to master the countless small decisions that create them. Chapter 2. Win today's small decisions. People often imagine that discipline is tested during life's biggest moments. The championship game, the final interview, the business presentation, the medical emergency, the life-changing opportunity. But that is not where discipline is built. Those moments simply reveal what has already been practiced. Discipline rarely fails during major moments. It fails during ordinary ones. It fails at 6 o'clock in the morning when the alarm rings. It fails when your phone lights up with another distraction. It fails when you promise yourself you'll start tomorrow. It fails when no one is watching. That is where your future is decided. Not in extraordinary moments, in ordinary ones. That's the key. The greatest battle of your life is not against other people. It is against your next decision. Every morning, life quietly asks a simple question. What will you do now? Not next year. Not next month. Now. You have a choice. Always. The choice looks small. Stay in bed. Or get up. Read one chapter. Or scroll for 30 minutes. Prepare healthy food. Or grab whatever is convenient. Speak with patience. Or react with frustration. Finish the task. Or delay it again. None of these decisions feels important by itself. That is exactly why they shape your life. The most dangerous choices are the ones that seem insignificant. Because insignificant choices become repeated choices. Repeated choices become habits. Habits become identity. Identity becomes destiny. Every choice counts. Repeat it. Every choice counts. Think about the snooze button. It lasts only a few seconds. It seems harmless. After all, what difference can 10 more minutes make? The real cost is not the time. The real cost is the decision. When you repeatedly teach yourself that comfort comes before commitment, you strengthen that pattern. Eventually, you stop trusting your own intentions. The alarm becomes a negotiation. Promises become optional. Discipline slowly disappears, not because of one morning, because of hundreds. Now think about procrastination. Most people imagine procrastination as laziness. It rarely is. More often, it is emotional avoidance. You delay because the work feels uncomfortable. You delay because perfection seems impossible. You delay because starting feels difficult. But every delay teaches your brain another lesson. It is acceptable to avoid discomfort. That lesson compounds. Soon you procrastinate, not only on work, but on difficult conversations, on financial planning, on improving your health, on pursuing your dreams. Avoidance becomes automatic. You don't notice the change because it happens slowly. That is why discipline demands awareness. Not awareness of giant failures, awareness of tiny ones. The complaint you didn't need to make, the excuse you almost believed, the unnecessary distraction, the extra hour wasted. Every one of them leaves a mark. Every choice counts. Now consider something even more subtle. Complaining. Many people believe complaining is harmless because words disappear. They don't. Every complaint reinforces a mindset. When you repeatedly focus on what is unfair, impossible, or frustrating, your attention becomes trained to search for obstacles. Eventually, your mind becomes excellent at finding reasons not to act. That is not intelligence. That is conditioning. Disciplined people condition themselves differently. They acknowledge reality. Then they move. No drama, no excuses, no self-pity. Action. Always action. Because action changes reality. Complaining only delays it. You have a choice. Every complaint can become a solution. Every excuse can become action. Every distraction can become focus. The decision belongs to you. Now let's look at people we often admire. The surgeon whose hands never shake. The airline pilot trusted with hundreds of lives. The elite athlete performing under enormous pressure. The musician who seems effortless on stage. The successful entrepreneur leading a growing company. From the outside, they appear naturally gifted. People call them talented. But talent explains very little. Consistency explains almost everything. A surgeon becomes exceptional through thousands of careful operations, constant study, and relentless preparation. A pilot develops calm through countless hours of disciplined practice. An athlete becomes unstoppable by showing up on ordinary training days when nobody applauds. A musician masters one difficult passage by repeating it hundreds of times. An entrepreneur builds a respected business by making one responsible decision after another for years. The public sees the performance. They rarely see the preparation. They see confidence. They don't see repetition. They see success. They don't see discipline. That's the difference. The invisible decisions always come before the visible results. The greatest professionals are not winning because they occasionally make brilliant choices. They are winning because they consistently make ordinary choices. They answer emails when they said they would. They prepare before meetings. They arrive on time. They finish what they start. They continue learning. They recover properly. They protect their routines. None of those actions earns applause. Together, they create excellence. Their advantage is not dramatic. It is cumulative. Thousands of invisible victories. Thousands of moments where nobody was watching. Thousands of opportunities to quit. Thousands of decisions to continue. You become what you repeatedly choose. Say it again. You become what you repeatedly choose. If you repeatedly choose distraction, you become distracted. If you repeatedly choose discipline, you become disciplined. If you repeatedly choose courage, courage becomes familiar. Identity is not something you discover. It is something you build. Choice after choice. Day after day. Now perhaps you're thinking about your biggest goal. Starting a business. Writing a book. Getting healthy. Paying off debt. Learning a language. Changing your career. Those goals can feel overwhelming. Your mind immediately sees how far away they are. Distance creates hesitation. Hesitation creates delay. Delay creates inaction. This is why so many people give up before they truly begin. They focus on the mountain instead of the next step. Disciplined people think differently. Whenever a goal feels overwhelming, they ask one question. What is today's smallest action? Not the entire project. Not the entire transformation. Only today. Can you write one page? Can you walk for 15 minutes? Can you save $10? Can you read 5 pages? Can you make one phone call? Can you organize one drawer? Can you practice for 20 minutes? Small actions remove resistance. The brain accepts what it rejects when the task appears enormous. This is how momentum begins. Not through intensity, through simplicity. One completed action creates confidence. Confidence creates another action, then another. Momentum quietly replaces resistance. That is why tiny victories matter. They teach your brain that progress is possible. One victory becomes 2. 2 become 10. 10 become 100. Eventually, discipline no longer feels forced. It feels natural. That's the key. Never underestimate the psychological power of finishing something small. Completion changes identity. Every completed task tells your mind, I am someone who follows through. That belief becomes priceless. Remember, you are never managing your entire future. You're managing today. Protect today. Protect your first hour. Protect your attention. Protect your energy. Protect your routines. Protect your standards. Because tomorrow is built from today's decisions, not yesterday's mistakes, not tomorrow's intentions, today's actions. Protect today. Repeat it. Protect today. The people who build extraordinary lives are not constantly searching for extraordinary opportunities. They become extraordinary by mastering ordinary decisions. One choice, then another, then another. The compound effect never asks whether your decisions are exciting. It only asks whether they are repeated. So the next time life offers you a seemingly insignificant choice, remember this chapter. There are no insignificant choices. There are only choices that are repeated often enough to shape who you become. Win today's small decisions, and tomorrow will begin winning itself. Chapter 3. Your habits never stop growing. One of the greatest illusions people believe is that today's habits disappear when today ends. They don't. Every habit leaves something behind. Every repetition changes you. Every action teaches your brain what to expect tomorrow. That is why habits never stand still. They are always growing, always expanding, always becoming stronger, whether you realize it or not. That's the key. Imagine putting $1 into a bank account. The amount looks insignificant. It seems too small to matter. But if that dollar earns interest, it begins to grow. Then the interest earns interest. Then that interest earns even more interest. Time quietly transforms something ordinary into something valuable. Habits work the same way. The first workout is only one workout. The first chapter you read is only one chapter. The first healthy meal is only one meal. The first dollar you save is only $1. The first promise you keep is only one promise. None of these actions looks impressive, yet each one begins earning interest. Not financial interest, personal interest, character interest, confidence interest, discipline interest. That interest compounds every day you continue. Now imagine the opposite. One unhealthy meal, one skipped workout, one unnecessary purchase, 1 hour wasted, one excuse accepted, one promise broken. Again, none of these appears dangerous, but they also earn interest, negative interest, slowly, quietly, relentlessly. The compound effect does not judge your habits, it simply multiplies them. Good habits slowly multiply opportunities. Bad habits quietly multiply problems. The law is neutral. You decide which side of it you live on. Everything compounds. Repeat those words. Everything compounds. Your knowledge compounds. Your finances compound. Your health compounds. Your relationships compound. Your reputation compounds. Even your thinking compounds. Every repeated thought strengthens the pathways inside your mind. Think positively every day, and optimism becomes easier. Think negatively every day, and pessimism begins to feel normal. Your brain is constantly adapting to repetition. It does not ask whether your habits are serving you. It simply becomes efficient at repeating them. That is why discipline matters so much. You're programming yourself, one repetition at a time. You have a choice. You can consciously build habits, or you can unconsciously inherit them. Either way, habits will continue growing. Consider someone who decides to read 20 pages every evening. 20 pages feel insignificant. After one day, almost nothing changes. After 1 week, still very little changes. But after 1 year, thousands of pages, dozens of books, hundreds of new ideas, new skills, better decisions, greater confidence, expanded opportunities. People suddenly call that person intelligent. What they rarely notice is that intelligence compounded quietly for months before anyone recognized it. Now picture another person who spends that same 20 minutes consuming random distractions every evening. The difference feels invisible until years pass. One person's knowledge expands, the other's attention weakens. One grows, the other remains exactly where they started. Neither result happened suddenly. Everything compounded. That's the key. The compound effect hides itself in ordinary days. It is almost invisible while it is working. That is why impatient people abandon good habits. They expect immediate rewards. Disciplined people understand something different. They trust accumulation. They understand that today's effort is being multiplied, even when they cannot yet see it. Now let's examine one simple example. A missed workout. Suppose you planned to exercise today. Instead, you decide to skip it. Nothing terrible happens. You still feel fine. Your body does not suddenly become weak. Your health does not collapse overnight. It seems harmless. That is exactly why the habit becomes dangerous. Tomorrow arrives. You skip again. Then next week. Then next month. Soon, you no longer identify as someone who exercises. Notice what changed. Not your muscles, your identity. The missed workout was never just about fitness. It was about self-image. Every excuse became another vote for a different version of yourself. This is how discipline quietly disappears, not through one dramatic failure, through repeated permission. Permission to wait, permission to delay, permission to negotiate, permission to quit. Each excuse strengthens the next excuse. Each delay becomes easier than the last. Eventually, avoiding effort feels natural. Not because you were born that way, because you practiced it. That's the key. Identity always follows repetition. Now reverse the example. Suppose you complete your workout even when you don't feel like it. Nothing extraordinary happens. You simply finish. The next day, you do it again. Then again. Soon, your mind begins believing something new. I am someone who trains. That belief becomes powerful. Eventually, missing a workout feels strange. Not because exercise became easier, because discipline became normal. Identity changed. The habit kept growing. The compound effect never stopped working. It simply worked in your favor. Nothing stays small forever. Repeat it. Nothing stays small forever. A single lie can become dishonesty. A single shortcut can become laziness. A single act of courage can become confidence. A single disciplined morning can become an entirely different lifestyle. Everything grows. Everything expands. Everything compounds. This is why you must stop judging habits by today's consequences. Judge them by where they lead. Ask yourself a better question. If I repeat this every day for 5 years, who will I become? That question reveals everything. Suddenly, one unhealthy meal is not just a meal. It is a direction. One skipped study session is not just one evening. It is a direction. One act of kindness is not just kindness. It is a direction. Your life is nothing more than accumulated directions. You have a choice. Choose carefully. Now it's time for complete honesty. Some habits are already working against you. You may not notice them because they have become automatic. Perhaps you check your phone the moment you wake up. Perhaps you constantly interrupt your own focus. Perhaps you complain more than you create. Perhaps you spend more time planning than acting. Perhaps you tell yourself you'll begin tomorrow. These habits feel ordinary because repetition has hidden them from your awareness. The mind stops noticing what it repeats every day. That is why awareness becomes your greatest advantage. You cannot change what you refuse to see. Most people try to improve their lives without first identifying the habits shaping them. That is like trying to change the direction of a ship without touching the steering wheel. Awareness comes first. Transformation comes second. Spend 1 week observing yourself. Not judging. Observing. Notice how often you reach for your phone without purpose. Notice how often you delay small tasks. Notice how often you break promises to yourself. Notice how often you choose comfort over progress. Write them down. Patterns become obvious when they are visible. Invisible habits become visible choices. Visible choices become opportunities for change. That's the key. Awareness interrupts automation. Once a habit becomes visible, it loses some of its power. Now you can replace it. Replace scrolling with reading. Replace complaining with problem solving. Replace procrastination with 5 minutes of action. Replace distraction with focused work. Do not try to rebuild your entire life in one day. Replace one habit. Repeat it, then replace another. Small improvements create exponential change because they also compound. Remember, you are never only changing today's behavior. You are changing tomorrow's identity. Every better habit becomes another investment. Every repeated improvement earns more interest. The process never stops. That should encourage you, because it also means it is never too late to begin. One disciplined decision today can start a completely different future. One healthy habit repeated long enough can erase years of poor choices. One courageous action can become the foundation of an entirely new identity. The compound effect is patient. It rewards persistence, not perfection. You will make mistakes. Everyone does. The goal is not to avoid failure forever. The goal is to never let failure become your habit. Return quickly. Correct quickly. Continue quickly, because every return strengthens discipline. Every restart is another investment. Never believe that one good decision is too small. Nothing stays small forever. Neither your strengths, nor your weaknesses, nor your habits. So begin paying attention to what is quietly growing inside your daily routine, because the habits you repeat today are already creating the person you will become tomorrow. Change the habit. Change the future. Say it once more. Change the habit. Change the future. Chapter 4. Become the person who keeps promises. There is one relationship that determines the quality of every other relationship in your life. It is not your relationship with your family, not your employer, not your friends, not your partner. It is your relationship with yourself. Everything begins there, because every decision you make either strengthens or weakens the trust you have in your own character. Most people think self-confidence is something you feel. It isn't. Self-confidence is something you earn. You earn it by keeping promises, especially the promises nobody else knows about. That's the key. When you tell yourself you will wake up early, your mind is listening. When you promise yourself you will exercise, your mind is listening. When you say you will finish the project, make the phone call, save the money, or stop making excuses, your mind is listening. Every promise is a contract, not with the world, with yourself, and every time you honor that contract, something powerful happens. You strengthen internal trust. Your mind begins to believe you. It begins to expect action instead of excuses. That expectation becomes confidence, not loud confidence, not arrogant confidence, quiet confidence. The kind that does not need approval because it has evidence. Evidence built one promise at a time. Your word matters. Repeat it. Your word matters. Most people underestimate how much damage they do to themselves by breaking small promises. Imagine making a promise to a close friend every single day. I'll be there. I'll call you. I'll help. Then imagine failing to show up over and over again. Eventually, your friend would stop believing you, not because they dislike you, because your actions taught them not to trust your words. Now ask yourself a difficult question. Why should your own mind trust you if you repeatedly disappoint yourself? You say you'll start Monday. Monday comes. Nothing happens. You say you'll wake up early. The alarm rings. You stay in bed. You say you'll save money. You buy something unnecessary. You say you'll stop procrastinating. You delay again. None of these moments feels dramatic, but together they send one clear message to your subconscious. My words cannot be trusted. That belief becomes dangerous because once trust disappears, commitment becomes weaker. Motivation becomes weaker. Identity becomes weaker. Soon you begin doubting yourself before you even begin. Not because you're incapable, because you've trained yourself to expect disappointment. The good news is that trust can be rebuilt, exactly the same way it was lost. One promise at a time. One fulfilled commitment at a time. One honest action at a time. Remember, confidence is not magic. It is accumulated evidence. Every time you keep your word, you collect another piece of evidence. I finish what I start. I do what I said I would do. I can depend on myself. That evidence compounds. Soon, your identity changes. You stop hoping you'll follow through. You expect it. That's the key. Never make promises just to feel inspired. Make promises you intend to keep, even if they are small. In fact, especially if they are small. Because small promises are easier to repeat, and repetition builds identity. You have a choice. You can impress yourself with ambitious plans, or you can transform yourself through consistent execution. Choose execution. Always. Now consider the difference between two kinds of people. The first person depends on external motivation. They work hard when someone is watching. They become disciplined before a deadline. They exercise because someone invited them. They study because there is an exam tomorrow. They perform because pressure forces them to act. Without pressure, they slow down. Without applause, they lose interest. Without accountability, they disappear. Their discipline belongs to the outside world. Remove the external force, and their habits collapse. Now look at the second person. This person also experiences boredom. They also feel tired. They also face distractions. The difference is not emotion. The difference is authority. Their authority comes from within. They do not wait for deadlines to create urgency. They create urgency themselves. They do not wait for others to hold them accountable. They hold themselves accountable. They do not need an audience to stay consistent. Their standards remain the same whether 10,000 people are watching or no one is watching at all. That is real discipline. That is freedom. Because external motivation is temporary. Internal discipline is sustainable. One depends on circumstances. The other depends on character. Ask yourself this question: if nobody ever praised my effort, would I still do the work? If the answer is yes, your discipline is becoming internal. If the answer is no, your motivation still belongs to other people. That is a dangerous place to live. Because other people cannot always provide your purpose. They cannot always provide your energy. They cannot always provide your confidence. Eventually, you must become your own source of momentum. That's the key. Stop asking whether others believe in you. Start asking whether you believe your own promises. Trust yourself first. Repeat it. Trust yourself first. The strongest people in the world are not always the most talented. Often, they are simply the people who trust themselves the most. Not because life has always been easy, but because they have repeatedly proven that they will continue regardless of difficulty. Every completed workout says, "I keep my word." Every finished project says, "I keep my word." Every difficult conversation handled with honesty says, "I keep my word." Eventually, those words become your identity. Then, discipline becomes automatic. Not because life became easier, because your standards became stronger. Now let's talk about difficult seasons. Everyone loves discipline when life is going well. It is easy to stay committed when motivation is high, when business is growing, when relationships are healthy, when energy is abundant. The real test comes when everything becomes difficult, when progress disappears, when rejection arrives, when money becomes tight, when your efforts seem invisible, when disappointment repeats itself. These are the moments that reveal character, not create it. Reveal it. Because character has already been built during ordinary days. Imagine a tall building standing through a violent storm. People admire the building during the storm, but the building's strength was created years earlier, brick by brick, steel beam by steel beam. The storm simply exposed the quality of the foundation. Character works exactly the same way. You do not suddenly become resilient during hardship. You discover whether resilience has already been practiced. Every promise you kept during easier seasons became another brick. Every disciplined day became another beam. Every act of integrity strengthened the foundation. Then adversity arrives. Instead of collapsing, you continue, not because you enjoy suffering, because consistency has become part of who you are. That is why integrity matters. Integrity means your actions remain aligned with your values regardless of convenience. You do the right thing even when shortcuts are available. You continue even when nobody notices. You remain honest even when dishonesty seems easier. You show up even when excuses sound reasonable. Integrity is not built through one heroic decision. It is built through thousands of ordinary ones. Character compounds exactly like habits. One honest decision strengthens the next. One courageous act prepares you for another. One disciplined morning makes tomorrow morning easier. Every repetition strengthens your foundation. Every shortcut weakens it. You have a choice. You are always laying another brick. The only question is whether you're building strength or weakness. Remember, resilience is not created during chaos. It is accumulated during calm. This is why your daily routines matter so much. Every promise kept today prepares you for tomorrow's uncertainty. Every disciplined action becomes future strength. Every act of integrity becomes future stability. That investment earns interest, exactly like every other habit. When the difficult season eventually arrives, and it will, you will not need to become someone new. You will simply continue being the person you have already practiced becoming. That is the power of integrity. That is the power of keeping your word. Not once. Every day. Integrity is daily discipline. Say it again. Integrity is daily discipline. Never underestimate the value of becoming someone who believes their own promises. Because once you trust yourself, your decisions become stronger. Your standards become higher. Your confidence becomes quieter. And your future becomes far more predictable. You no longer hope you will succeed. You know you will continue. And that changes everything. Chapter 5. Protect your future from today's comfort. Every person wants a better future, a healthier body, greater financial freedom, stronger relationships, meaningful work, peace of mind. Almost everyone wants these outcomes. Very few are willing to pay the daily price. Why? Because comfort is persuasive. Comfort never argues loudly. It whispers, "Rest a little longer. You deserve this. You've worked hard enough. You can start tomorrow. It won't matter this time." Those whispers sound harmless. Sometimes they even sound reasonable. That is exactly what makes them dangerous. The greatest enemy of discipline is rarely pain. It is comfort. Pain is obvious. Comfort is disguised. Pain tells you something is wrong. Comfort convinces you that everything is fine while your future slowly slips away. That's the key. Success is rarely destroyed by one terrible decision. It is quietly traded away for small moments of unnecessary comfort. One comfortable morning. One comfortable excuse. One comfortable distraction. Repeated hundreds of times. The compound effect begins working against you. Every easy choice carries a hidden future cost. You simply don't receive the bill immediately. Comfort has a price. Repeat it. Comfort has a price. Imagine standing at a crossroads. One path is comfortable today. The other is uncomfortable today. The comfortable path asks almost nothing from you. Sleep in. Skip the workout. Avoid the difficult conversation. Spend the money. Delay the project. Ignore the problem. Life feels easier, at least for the moment. The uncomfortable path asks for effort. Wake up. Train. Study. Save. Speak honestly. Finish the work. Face uncertainty. It feels difficult, at least for the moment. Notice something important. The comfortable path gives immediate rewards and delayed consequences. The disciplined path gives immediate discomfort and delayed rewards. Most people choose according to today's feelings. Disciplined people choose according to tomorrow's outcomes. That is why their lives eventually look so different. You have a choice. Every day. Will you purchase temporary comfort or permanent growth? You cannot have both. Every decision costs something. The question is not whether you will pay. The question is when. Either now or later. People who constantly avoid small discomfort eventually experience enormous discomfort. People who willingly embrace small discomfort often avoid enormous suffering. That is one of life's greatest paradoxes. Now let's make this practical. Think about money. Suppose two friends receive exactly the same paycheck. The first spends almost everything. Every purchase provides a little excitement. A better phone, another subscription, another expensive dinner, another impulse purchase. None of these decisions ruins their finances. Not today. But they create a habit. Consumption becomes automatic. Saving becomes difficult. Years pass. Financial stress grows. Unexpected emergencies become disasters. Retirement feels impossible. Freedom disappears. Now consider the second friend. They still enjoy life. But they pause before spending. They invest first. They save consistently. They resist unnecessary purchases. At first, it feels restrictive, sometimes uncomfortable, sometimes frustrating. But something remarkable happens. Opportunity begins appearing. Investments grow. Options increase. Stress decreases. Freedom expands. People assume they became lucky. No, they simply accepted short-term discomfort in exchange for long-term peace. Short pain, long reward. Repeat it. Short pain, long reward. Now think about health. Nobody enjoys every workout. Nobody wakes up excited every single morning. Some days your body feels tired. Some days your motivation disappears. Some days comfort invites you back into bed. Again, you have a choice. Comfort now, or strength later. Skip one workout and almost nothing changes. Skip 100 and everything changes. Eat one unhealthy meal and nothing dramatic happens. Repeat it for years, and your future begins collecting the cost. The opposite is also true. One healthy meal changes very little. Thousands change everything. One walk changes very little. Years of movement transform your body. Discipline rarely produces dramatic daily results. It produces extraordinary lifetime results. That's the key. Health is not built by intensity. It is built by consistency. Now, let's talk about relationships. Comfort often tells you to avoid difficult conversations. Don't apologize. Don't express gratitude. Don't admit you're wrong. Don't make the phone call. Don't spend quality time. Those choices feel easier today. But every avoided conversation creates distance. Every ignored relationship weakens trust. Every unspoken appreciation leaves love unexpressed. Eventually, people wonder why relationships fall apart. Rarely because of one major event. Usually because comfort repeatedly defeated effort. Strong relationships require intentional discomfort. Honest conversations, active listening, forgiveness, patience, sacrifice. These actions are not always easy, but they produce extraordinary trust over time. Again, short pain, long reward. Now think about your career. Imagine two employees. One does exactly enough to avoid criticism, nothing more. The other continuously learns, reads, practices, improves, volunteers, asks better questions, accepts difficult assignments. At first, they earn the same paycheck. Their daily lives appear almost identical. Then, time begins multiplying their decisions. The learner becomes valuable. The comfortable employee becomes replaceable. Promotions follow preparation. Opportunities follow competence. Confidence follows skill. People call it success. The truth is much simpler. One person consistently accepted temporary discomfort. The other consistently chose convenience. The future rewarded one decision more than the other. You have a choice. Every ordinary day contains opportunities to strengthen your future or weaken it. The choice rarely feels dramatic. It feels ordinary. That is why it matters. Comfort slowly becomes addiction when left unchallenged. Not because comfort is evil. Rest is necessary. Recovery is necessary. Peace is necessary. The problem begins when comfort becomes your default response to every challenge. When every inconvenience becomes something to escape. When every obstacle becomes a reason to quit. When every difficult emotion demands immediate relief. That pattern slowly destroys resilience. Discipline teaches something different. Feel discomfort. Continue anyway. Feel uncertainty. Continue anyway. Feel fear. Continue anyway. Feel resistance. Continue anyway. Emotions are temporary. Character is permanent. That's the key. Every time you move through discomfort instead of avoiding it, your tolerance grows. The next challenge becomes easier, not because the challenge changed, because you changed. Now, there is one question that can completely transform your decision-making. Ask it before every important choice. Before buying something expensive. Before skipping your workout. Before staying up too late. Before procrastinating. Before reacting emotionally. Before giving up. Ask yourself, will my future self thank me? Pause. Answer honestly. Your future self already knows the consequences. The version of you 5 years from now is watching today's decisions. That future version cannot change the past, but you can, right now. Ask it again. Will my future self thank me? If the answer is yes, do it. If the answer is no, don't negotiate. Don't justify. Don't make excuses. Choose the action your future deserves. This one question removes enormous confusion. Should you save the money? Will my future self thank me? Should you study instead of scrolling? Will my future self thank me? Should you tell the truth? Will my future self thank me? Should you finish the work today? Will my future self thank me? Should you exercise even though you're tired? Will my future self thank me? Eventually, this question becomes automatic. It replaces impulse with wisdom. It replaces emotion with vision. It replaces comfort with purpose. Remember, discipline is not punishment. It is protection. You're protecting tomorrow from today's impulses. You're protecting your health from today's cravings, your finances from today's spending, your relationships from today's neglect, your dreams from today's excuses. Every disciplined decision becomes a gift, not for the person you are today, for the person you are becoming. That is the true purpose of delayed gratification. It is an act of respect toward your future self. You have a choice: comfort today or freedom tomorrow. Comfort today or confidence tomorrow. Comfort today or opportunity tomorrow. The future is quietly recording every answer. Never forget, comfort has a price, and equally important, short pain, long reward. So before your next important decision, before your next excuse, before your next moment of weakness, ask one simple question: will my future self thank me? Then let that answer guide your life. Chapter 6. Consistency defeats motivation. Motivation feels powerful. It makes you believe anything is possible. You wake up inspired. You make ambitious plans. You buy new notebooks. You create schedules. You promise yourself that this time will be different. For a few days, everything feels easy. You wake up early. You exercise. You study. You work with intensity. Then something changes. You wake up tired. The excitement fades. The routine begins to feel repetitive. The work becomes ordinary. Suddenly, the same goals that excited you now feel heavy. Most people interpret this as failure. It isn't. It is simply human nature. Motivation rises. Motivation falls. Just like the weather. Just like the seasons. Just like your energy. No emotion remains constant forever. That's the key. If your discipline depends on your emotions, your future will always be unpredictable. One good mood and you work. One bad mood and you stop. One exciting week and you make progress. One difficult week and you lose momentum. That is not discipline. That is emotional dependence. Real discipline begins the moment you stop negotiating with your feelings. You have a choice. You can let your emotions become your manager, or you can let your principles become your manager. Choose your principles. Every time, because emotions make terrible long-term planners. Think about how many times you've said these words. I just don't feel like it. Those 5 words have quietly destroyed countless dreams. Not because the people lacked ability, because they obeyed temporary emotions. Imagine if a pilot only flew the airplane when he felt motivated. Imagine if a surgeon only operated when she felt inspired. Imagine if firefighters only responded when they were in the right mood. The world would stop functioning. Professionals understand something that amateurs rarely do. Their responsibility is greater than their emotions. They do the work because the work must be done, not because it feels good. Your life deserves that same level of professionalism. Stop treating your goals like hobbies. Treat them like responsibilities. Responsibilities are fulfilled whether you feel inspired or not. Feelings are temporary. Systems remain. Repeat it. Feelings are temporary. Systems remain. Every successful person eventually learns this lesson. Motivation gets you started. Systems keep you moving. Motivation is a spark. Systems are the engine. Motivation creates excitement. Systems create results. One disappears. The other continues. That is why disciplined people spend less time searching for inspiration and more time building routines. They remove unnecessary decisions. They simplify their environment. They create habits that operate almost automatically. Instead of asking, "Do I feel like exercising today?" Their calendar already answers the question. Instead of wondering whether they should study, write, save money, or practice, the routine has already decided. This eliminates one of the greatest enemies of progress: decision fatigue. Every unnecessary decision consumes mental energy. Should I go today? Should I wait? Should I start later? Should I skip this once? The disciplined mind asks fewer questions. It already knows the answer. I do it because that's what I do. That's the key. A strong system protects you from a weak moment. Suppose you decide that every weekday at 7 in the morning you exercise. Not when you feel motivated. Not when the weather is perfect. Not when your schedule becomes convenient. Every weekday. Eventually, your mind stops debating. The routine becomes normal. Resistance becomes weaker. The habit becomes stronger. That is the hidden power of systems. They reduce dependence on willpower. Willpower is valuable, but it is limited. Systems conserve it. Now think about brushing your teeth. You probably don't wake up every morning asking yourself whether you should brush them. You simply do it. The habit has become automatic. Imagine applying that same level of consistency to reading, to saving money, to exercise, to focused work, to gratitude, to planning. Your life would begin changing almost effortlessly, not because the work became easier, because the decision became easier. That is why routines matter so much. Routines remove unnecessary negotiation. The strongest people are not stronger because they possess superhuman motivation. They are stronger because they have fewer internal arguments. The decision has already been made. You have a choice. Create systems that support your future, or continue relying on emotions that constantly change. Now let's talk about difficult days. Everyone loves routines when life feels easy. The true value of a routine appears when life becomes difficult. When you're tired, when you're stressed, when you're disappointed, when you experience failure. Those are the days that matter most, because discipline built on motivation collapses. Discipline built on routine survives. Think about elite athletes. Do they feel motivated every single morning? Of course not. Some days they feel exhausted. Some days they feel discouraged. Some days they would rather stay home, but they train. Not because of emotion, because of commitment. Think about accomplished writers. There are mornings when every sentence feels difficult. Every paragraph feels weak. Every idea seems uninspired. Still, they write, page after page, day after day. Eventually, inspiration returns, but it returns because they stayed at work, not because they waited for it. The same is true for entrepreneurs, teachers, doctors, craftsmen, parents, leaders. The people who achieve extraordinary things are not permanently motivated. They are permanently committed. Commitment continues after excitement disappears. That's the difference. Whenever your mind says, "I'm tired," answer with action. Whenever your mind says, "Maybe tomorrow," answer with action. Whenever your mind says, "I don't feel ready," answer with action. Do it anyway. Repeat it. Do it anyway. Your feelings deserve acknowledgement. They do not deserve control. Feeling afraid does not mean stop. Feeling uncertain does not mean stop. Feeling bored does not mean stop. Feeling frustrated does not mean stop. Emotions are information, not commands. Discipline means listening without obeying. That distinction changes everything. Now consider another common mistake. People often believe that one extraordinary day will compensate for weeks of inconsistency. It doesn't work that way. Imagine someone who never exercises for 6 months, then spends 6 exhausting hours in the gym. Will that single day erase months of neglect? No. Imagine someone who saves nothing for years, then suddenly saves 1 paycheck. Helpful? Yes. Transformational? Not by itself. Imagine someone studying for 12 straight hours the night before an exam instead of preparing consistently for months. The stress is enormous. The learning is limited. The results are unpredictable. Intensity has value, but consistency has far greater value. Tiny daily effort beats occasional heroic effort almost every time. Because consistency compounds. Intensity fades. Consistency grows. That's the key. Imagine 2 people learning a language. One studies for 15 minutes every day. The other studies 5 hours once every few weeks. At first, the second person feels more productive. They complete huge sessions. They feel accomplished, but they cannot maintain the pace. The first person quietly continues. Week after week, month after month, year after year. Eventually, they become fluent, not because they worked harder on one day, because they refused to stop on ordinary days. The same principle applies to almost everything worthwhile. Fitness, business, writing, parenting, friendships, finances, character, small effort. Repeated consistently always defeats inconsistent intensity. This is the mathematics of the compound effect. Every day adds another layer, another brick, another investment, another piece of evidence. One day you look back and realize the impossible became ordinary, not because of one spectacular breakthrough, because of thousands of consistent repetitions. That is how mountains are climbed. That is how books are written. That is how companies are built. That is how trust is earned. That is how lives are transformed. One day, then another, then another. You have a choice. Chase motivation forever, or build consistency. One creates excitement. The other creates results. Never confuse movement with momentum. Motivation creates movement. Consistency creates momentum. Momentum eventually becomes identity. Identity becomes destiny. Remember this whenever you feel like quitting. You're not trying to win today. You're trying to become someone who continues tomorrow. That is a completely different goal. It removes pressure. It builds patience. It strengthens resilience. It creates permanence. And permanence is where extraordinary success lives. Say these words until they become part of your identity. Feelings are temporary. Systems remain. Do it anyway. Consistency always wins. Again, consistency always wins. No matter how talented someone is, they cannot outperform years of disciplined consistency. No matter how motivated someone feels today, they cannot defeat a person who quietly keeps showing up every day. That person becomes unstoppable, not because they never struggled, because they never stopped. Chapter 7. Master the Invisible Days. Most people do not quit because life becomes impossible. They quit because life becomes ordinary. There is no applause, no breakthrough, no dramatic transformation, no exciting milestone. Just another morning, another workout, another page, another meeting, another practice session, another quiet day that looks exactly like yesterday. That is where dreams usually die, not in failure, in boredom. That's the key. Anyone can stay committed when progress is obvious. Very few remain committed when progress is invisible. That is why extraordinary people eventually separate themselves from everyone else. They understand something most people never learn. The invisible days matter the most. Think about the last time you planted a seed. You place it in the soil. You water it. The next morning, nothing has changed. The second morning, nothing. The third, the fourth, the 10th. You could easily conclude that nothing is happening. You would be wrong. Growth has already begun. It simply cannot yet be seen. Your habits work exactly the same way. The workout you completed today may not change your body tomorrow. The book you read tonight may not immediately change your thinking. The money you invested this week may not noticeably change your finances. The difficult conversation you handled with maturity may not instantly improve the relationship. But something has already changed. The roots have begun growing. Invisible work is taking place. You just cannot measure it yet. Invisible work creates visible success. Repeat it. Invisible work creates visible success. The greatest mistake impatient people make is confusing invisible with non-existent. If they cannot see improvement, they assume improvement is not happening. That assumption causes them to quit. The tragedy is that many people quit just before the results begin appearing. Imagine digging for water. You dig 1 foot, nothing. 2 feet, nothing. 10 feet, still nothing. Frustrated, you stop. Someone else begins digging in the same place. 5 more feet. Water appears. Who found the water? The second person receives the reward, but both people contributed to reaching it. The first person abandoned the process too early. Life often works this way. Every disciplined action moves you closer to results you cannot yet see. You have a choice. Trust appearances, or trust the process. Choose the process. Always. Many successful people appear to achieve overnight success. What the world calls overnight success is usually 10 years of invisible preparation. The musician practiced thousands of hours before filling stadiums. The author wrote countless pages before publishing a bestseller. The entrepreneur endured years of uncertainty before building a successful company. The athlete spent endless mornings training before standing on a podium. The public celebrates the visible moment. The professional values the invisible years. That difference changes everything. Now think about one of nature's greatest lessons: bamboo. Certain species of bamboo spend years growing beneath the surface before breaking through the ground. For a long time, it appears as though absolutely nothing is happening. Someone unfamiliar with the process might stop watering the soil. They might conclude that the seed failed. They would walk away. But beneath the surface, an enormous root system is developing. The plant is preparing itself to support rapid future growth. Without those invisible roots, the visible height would be impossible. Your discipline works exactly the same way. The routines you repeat today are building roots. Your confidence is growing roots. Your knowledge is growing roots. Your character is growing roots. Your resilience is growing roots. You may not receive immediate recognition. That does not mean you are not growing. It means your foundation is still being built. That's the key. Strong foundations are almost always invisible. No one admires the concrete beneath a skyscraper, yet the entire building depends on it. Character is your foundation. Discipline is your foundation. Integrity is your foundation. Patience is your foundation. These qualities grow quietly before anyone notices them. The same principle exists in investing. Imagine placing a small amount of money into an investment account every month. The first year feels almost disappointing. Growth appears slow. The second year still seems modest. Many people become impatient. They stop investing because they expected dramatic returns. The patient investor continues. Eventually, something remarkable happens. The interest begins earning interest. Growth accelerates. What once looked insignificant becomes substantial. The power was never in one deposit. The power was in consistent accumulation. Exactly the same thing happens with discipline. Every workout, every book, every honest conversation, every focused hour, every promise kept. They all accumulate. Then one day people ask how you changed so much. The answer is simple. You never stopped making deposits. Now consider learning a complex skill, whether it is playing the piano, speaking another language, writing, programming, leading people. None of these abilities appears overnight. In fact, improvement often feels frustratingly slow. One lesson, one practice session, one mistake, one correction, repeated hundreds of times. At first, your progress is almost impossible to notice. Then something unexpected happens. One day, you suddenly perform a task that once seemed impossible. People assume you possess natural talent. You know the truth. The invisible repetitions finally became visible ability. That is why comparison is so dangerous. You compare your visible beginning to someone else's invisible years of preparation. You see today's performance. You don't see yesterday's sacrifices. You see the confidence. You don't see the uncertainty they pushed through. You see the success. You don't see the thousands of invisible days that created it. Stop comparing visible results. Start copying invisible habits. Trust the process. Repeat it. Trust the process. There will be mornings when your work feels unnoticed. Continue. There will be weeks when progress seems painfully slow. Continue. There will be months when doubt begins speaking louder than confidence. Continue. Remember this. The process is working even when your emotions disagree. The process is working even when the results are delayed. The process is working because repetition is changing you, not just your outcomes. You. And that transformation always begins internally before it appears externally. You have a choice. Measure your life by today's visible rewards, or measure it by today's faithful repetitions. Choose repetition. Every time. Now let's confront another modern problem. People have become addicted to excitement. Everything must feel new, faster, bigger, more entertaining. The moment something becomes repetitive, many people lose interest. They mistake novelty for progress. But real mastery is repetitive. Real excellence is repetitive. Real discipline is repetitive. A pianist plays scales thousands of times. An athlete practices the same movement thousands of times. A surgeon repeats the same procedures with extraordinary precision. A craftsman perfects simple techniques through endless repetition. From the outside, repetition looks boring. From the inside, Repetition builds greatness. That is why disciplined people stop asking, "How can I make this exciting?" Instead, they ask, "How can I become consistent?" Excitement is temporary. Mastery is permanent. That's the key. The greatest people are not addicted to excitement. They are committed to excellence. Excellence demands repetition. Every ordinary day becomes another brick, another layer, another investment, another opportunity to improve by 1%. 1% appears insignificant until it compounds for years. Then it becomes extraordinary. Never underestimate the value of one more ordinary day completed with extraordinary discipline. That day matters because it joins every other disciplined day you have ever lived. Momentum grows, character deepens, confidence strengthens, opportunities expand, quietly, almost invisibly, until suddenly everyone notices. Remember, greatness rarely announces its arrival. It grows silently, patiently, steadily. Then, one day, it becomes impossible to ignore. The harvest always comes after the planting, never before, which means your responsibility is not to chase the harvest. Your responsibility is to keep planting. Plant discipline, plant honesty, plant patience, plant courage, plant consistency, plant focused work, plant healthy habits, plant acts of integrity. Do not become obsessed with when the harvest will arrive. Farmers do not dig up seeds every week to check whether they are growing. They water, they protect, they wait. You must do the same. Keep planting. Repeat it. Keep planting. On the days when nothing exciting happens, keep planting. On the days when progress feels invisible, keep planting. On the days when doubt whispers that your effort is pointless, keep planting. Because invisible work creates visible success, because the process always rewards patience, because greatness grows quietly before it becomes undeniable, and because every invisible day you refuse to waste becomes another reason your future will eventually look extraordinary. Chapter 8. Build an identity that compounds. There comes a point in every disciplined life when the question changes. At first, people ask, "How do I become successful? How do I lose weight? How do I build wealth? How do I become confident?" Those are understandable questions, but they are incomplete because they focus on results, not identity. Results matter, but identity creates results. That's the key. Most people spend their lives chasing outcomes while ignoring the person capable of producing those outcomes. They want the promotion without becoming indispensable. They want confidence without becoming courageous. They want financial freedom without becoming financially disciplined. They want respect without becoming respectable. They want change without changing. That never lasts. Temporary effort can produce temporary results. Only a transformed identity produces permanent ones. You have a choice. You can chase goals, or you can build the person who naturally reaches them. Always build the person. Imagine someone saying, "I want to run a marathon." That is a goal. Now imagine someone saying, "I am a runner." That is identity. The first statement depends on completing one event. The second shapes daily behavior. A runner trains. A runner eats differently. A runner sleeps differently. A runner protects recovery. A runner continues after setbacks. Notice the difference. Identity answers the question, "Who am I?" Goals answer the question, "What do I want?" One lasts. The other eventually disappears. When the marathon is finished, the goal ends. But if the identity remains, the behavior continues. That is why identity is more powerful than achievement. Achievement can be temporary. Identity becomes permanent. This is who I am. Repeat it. This is who I am. Successful people think differently before they behave differently. They do not ask, should I work today? They think, I am someone who honors commitments. They do not ask, should I exercise? They think, I take care of my body. They do not ask, should I tell the truth? They think, I am an honest person. The decision becomes easier because identity has already answered it. Most internal conflict disappears when identity becomes clear. That is the hidden freedom of discipline. You stop negotiating with yourself. Imagine someone who truly believes they are punctual. When an appointment approaches, they do not debate whether they should leave on time. Their identity has already decided. Imagine someone who believes they are generous. They do not struggle every time an opportunity to help appears. Generosity has become part of who they are. Identity simplifies decisions. That is why building identity is more important than building motivation. Motivation asks, how do I feel? Identity answers, this is what I do. That's the key. The strongest people rarely rely on enthusiasm. They rely on self-definition. Every day they reinforce the answer to one question. Who am I becoming? That question quietly shapes every action. Now consider how identity is actually built. Many people believe identity begins with belief. It doesn't. Identity begins with behavior. Every disciplined action casts another vote. Every promise kept casts another vote. Every difficult conversation handled with integrity casts another vote. Every workout, every page read, every focused hour, every healthy meal, every courageous decision. Each one says, this is the kind of person I am. Identity is not declared once. It is voted on daily. Imagine an election held every morning. Your actions are the ballots. If you repeatedly choose discipline, discipline wins. If you repeatedly choose excuses, excuses win. There is no final election. The voting never stops. That is why every decision matters. Not because one decision changes everything. Because every decision strengthens something. Become before you achieve. Repeat it. Become before you achieve. Suppose you want to write a book. Instead of obsessing over becoming a published author, become someone who writes every day. Suppose you want financial freedom. Become someone who consistently saves and invests. Suppose you want confidence. Become someone who repeatedly does difficult things. Suppose you want better relationships. Become someone who listens well, keeps promises, and speaks honestly. Achievement follows identity. Always. You do not rise to your hopes. You rise to your habits, and habits grow from identity. Many people become discouraged because they expect identity to change overnight. It doesn't. Just as a tree grows ring by ring, identity grows action by action. One disciplined morning, one honest conversation, one completed workout, one finished chapter, one courageous decision. None of these moments transforms you instantly. Together, they become undeniable. One day, you realize something remarkable. The things that once required enormous effort have become normal. Not because the work changed, because you changed. You're no longer forcing discipline. You are expressing identity. That is one of the greatest transformations a human being can experience. You no longer need constant reminders. You no longer need endless motivation. You simply behave consistently because that behavior matches who you believe you are. That's the key. Identity eliminates unnecessary struggle. Now, let's examine a common mistake. People often define themselves by past failures. They say, I've always been lazy. I've never been disciplined. I'm just bad with money. I'm not confident. Those statements are dangerous, not because they are always false, because they become instructions. Your mind constantly works to remain consistent with the identity you give it. If you repeatedly tell yourself you are disorganized, your actions begin supporting that belief. If you repeatedly call yourself weak, your decisions begin reflecting weakness. Words become expectations. Expectations become behavior. Behavior becomes identity. Break that cycle. Replace limiting labels with intentional ones, not empty affirmations, earned identities. Do not simply say, "I am disciplined." Practice discipline until the statement becomes true. Do not simply say, "I am courageous." Practice courage until evidence supports the belief. Identity must be reinforced through action, otherwise it becomes fantasy. You have a choice: describe your past or define your future. Choose your future. Now let's move beyond goals entirely. Goals are valuable. They provide direction, but they should never become your primary focus. Imagine someone whose only goal is losing 20 pounds. Eventually, they reach the target. Now what? If their identity never changed, old habits quietly return. The weight returns with them. The same thing happens with money, career success, relationships, education. When behavior changes without identity changing, old patterns eventually reclaim control. That is why outcomes alone never guarantee transformation. Identity does. Instead of asking, "What do I want to accomplish this year?" ask, "Who do I want to become?" Notice how different the answers feel. Instead of becoming healthier, become disciplined. Instead of becoming wealthier, become responsible. Instead of becoming respected, become trustworthy. Instead of becoming successful, become consistent. These identities continue producing results long after individual goals have been completed. This changes everything. Life stops becoming a series of temporary achievements. It becomes a lifelong process of becoming. Every challenge becomes an opportunity to reinforce identity. Every setback becomes another chance to vote for the person you refuse to stop becoming. Every ordinary day becomes meaningful. Because every ordinary day shapes someone extraordinary. That is the compound effect at its deepest level, not merely compounded habits. Compounded identity. Identity becomes stronger through repetition. Character becomes stronger through repetition. Integrity becomes stronger through repetition. Leadership becomes stronger through repetition. Everything worth becoming compounds. You have a choice. Focus on collecting accomplishments, or focus on becoming the kind of person who naturally creates them. Choose becoming. Always. Because accomplishments fade, titles change, money comes and goes, recognition disappears, but character remains, identity remains. The person you become continues producing value long after individual victories have passed. Never forget that. Your greatest achievement will never be a trophy, or a bank account, or a title. Your greatest achievement will always be becoming someone capable of earning those things repeatedly. That person cannot be taken away from you. That person travels with you into every challenge, into every opportunity, into every season of life. Remember these words. This is who I am. Become before you achieve. And finally, identity creates destiny. Repeat it one last time. Identity creates destiny, because the life you repeatedly live is always a reflection of the person you repeatedly choose to become. Chapter 9. Never underestimate one more day. Most people do not fail because they lack talent. They do not fail because they lack intelligence. They do not fail because opportunity never arrived. More often, they fail because they stopped one day too soon. One ordinary day. One ordinary decision. One moment when quitting felt more reasonable than continuing. That is where countless dreams disappear. Not in catastrophe, in surrender. That's the key. The distance between success and failure is often much smaller than it appears. Sometimes it is one more conversation, one more workout, one more sales call, one more page, one more attempt, one more disciplined morning. The tragedy is that nobody knows exactly when the breakthrough will arrive. If they did, quitting would become impossible. Imagine climbing a mountain covered in thick fog. You cannot see the summit. Every step looks exactly like the previous one. Your legs become tired. Your breathing becomes heavy. The path feels endless. You begin wondering whether the summit even exists. Now imagine turning around only 50 steps before reaching the top. You never discover what was waiting beyond the fog. Life often works exactly this way. Progress remains hidden until persistence reveals it. You have a choice. Quit because you cannot see the destination, or continue because you trust the direction. Choose the direction. Always. People often ask, how long will it take? That question sounds reasonable, but it quietly weakens commitment. A better question is, who will I become if I refuse to quit? That question changes everything. Now persistence is no longer about reaching a destination. It becomes about building identity. Every additional day strengthens discipline. Every additional challenge strengthens resilience. Every additional obstacle strengthens character. Persistence compounds exactly the way habits compound. The first difficult day teaches you something. The 100th difficult day transforms you into someone different. That transformation is priceless. One more day matters. Repeat it. One more day matters. There will be mornings when your effort feels meaningless. Continue. There will be weeks when results seem impossible to find. Continue. There will be months when you wonder whether all your work has been wasted. Continue. The breakthrough is almost never announced in advance. It simply arrives after enough invisible effort has accumulated. Think about water slowly heating inside a pot. For a long time, nothing dramatic appears to happen. The temperature rises 1 degree, then another, then another. Still no visible change. Then suddenly, the water begins to boil. People notice the boiling. Few appreciate the 99 degrees that came before it. Success works the same way. The visible breakthrough depends entirely upon countless invisible moments that preceded it. Those moments matter. Every one of them. Now consider the world of business. Many successful companies spent years operating without recognition. The founders worked long hours, made mistakes, solved problems, lost customers, learned difficult lessons, repeated the process again and again. For years, almost nobody noticed. Then suddenly, the company became successful. The headlines called it an overnight success. The founders smiled. They knew the truth. There was nothing overnight about it. The public witnessed the result. They did not witness the repetition. The same story appears everywhere. An entrepreneur spends years refining an idea before anyone believes in it. An athlete trains before sunrise for thousands of mornings before winning a championship. A writer fills notebook after notebook before publishing a book that reaches millions. A musician practices scales so many times that audiences later mistake preparation for talent. People admire the final performance. Professionals remember the invisible practice. That difference explains almost everything. You must learn to admire your own preparation before anyone else does. because applause arrives late. Sometimes very late. That's the key. Do not expect recognition to arrive before the work deserves it. Continue anyway. Imagine a farmer planting crops. Would the farmer abandon the field because nothing grew after 1 week? Of course not. The farmer understands seasons. The farmer understands timing. The farmer understands that growth follows natural laws. Your discipline follows natural laws too. Plant, protect, repeat. Harvest later. Never reverse the order. Too many people demand harvest before planting, recognition before effort, confidence before action, results before consistency. Life does not work that way. The process cannot be rushed, but it can be trusted. Stay in the game. Repeat it. Stay in the game. Persistence is often misunderstood. People imagine persistence means forcing yourself through unbearable suffering forever. That is not what real persistence looks like. Real persistence is surprisingly ordinary. It is waking up again, doing today's work again, keeping today's promise again, improving by 1% again. Real persistence rarely feels heroic. It feels repetitive. That is exactly why so few people practice it. Everyone wants extraordinary outcomes. Very few embrace ordinary repetition. Yet repetition creates every extraordinary outcome that has ever existed. Now think about the gap between ordinary people and exceptional people. Many assume the gap is created by intelligence, or talent, or luck. Sometimes those factors help. But over the course of years, another factor usually becomes much more important. Time spent continuing. Imagine two people beginning the same journey. Both are equally capable. Both possess similar opportunities. The first person quits after 6 difficult months. The second continues for 6 more years. What separates them? Not ability, not potential. Time. Thousands of additional disciplined decisions. Thousands of additional corrections. Thousands of additional lessons. Thousands of additional opportunities to improve. The gap slowly widens. At first, nobody notices. Then it becomes impossible to ignore. That is the mathematics of persistence. Every additional disciplined day increases your advantage. Every additional day compounds your experience, compounds your confidence, compounds your judgment, compounds your skill, compounds your resilience. Most people stop compounding too early. They interrupt the process before it has enough time to reward them. Do not make that mistake. You have a choice. Become impatient or become unstoppable. Patience always produces greater returns. Now let's talk about discouragement. Discouragement visits everyone, even the strongest, even the most disciplined, even the most accomplished. The difference is not whether discouragement appears. The difference is how long it stays. Undisciplined people allow discouragement to become identity. Disciplined people treat it as weather, temporary, passing, never permanent. One disappointing day does not define you. One unsuccessful attempt does not define you. One difficult season does not define you. Only repeated surrender defines you. As long as you continue, possibility remains alive. That truth should encourage you, because continuation is always available. No matter how many mistakes you've made, no matter how much time you've lost, no matter how often you've failed, you can continue today. That single decision changes the direction of your future. Remember something important. Your competition is not standing still. Life is always moving. Every day you continue, you grow. Every day you quit, someone else continues. Someone else learns. Someone else improves. Someone else compounds another day of discipline. The gap never stays the same. It grows. That is why consistency becomes such a competitive advantage. Not because it is exciting, because it is rare. Most people disappear. Few remain. Those who remain eventually become exceptional. Not because they were chosen, because they stayed. That's the key. Success often belongs to the last person still improving, the last person still learning, the last person still showing up, the last person still believing that today's effort matters. Remember this whenever your progress feels invisible. You're not merely completing another day. You're widening the gap. You're strengthening your foundation. You're becoming someone who refuses to surrender. That identity will eventually produce opportunities unavailable to people who quit early. Never underestimate one more disciplined day, one more honest effort, one more attempt, one more improvement, one more lesson, one more act of courage, one more decision to continue, because one more day eventually becomes one more week, one more month, one more year, one more decade, and suddenly your entire life has been transformed, not by dramatic moments, by repeated continuation. So when your mind whispers, "Maybe this isn't working," answer, "One more day." When it says, "You're too tired," answer, "One more day." When it says, "Nobody notices," answer, "One more day." When it says, "Maybe you should quit," answer, "One more day." Eventually, those days become your greatest advantage. Eventually, persistence becomes your identity. Eventually, the breakthrough arrives. Not because you chased it, because you outlasted the obstacles standing between you and it. Remember these words. One more day matters. Stay in the game. And above all, don't stop now. Repeat it one final time. Don't stop now. Because most victories never belong to the fastest. They rarely belong to the loudest. They almost always belong to the people who simply refused to leave before the reward arrived. Chapter 10. Become the compound effect. You have reached the final chapter, but this is not the end. It is the beginning. Because the greatest lesson in this audiobook is not about discipline. It is not about habits. It is not about consistency. It is about identity. Everything you have learned points toward one transformation. You are no longer trying to practice discipline. You're becoming discipline. That is the difference. That is the key. When most people think about success, they picture an outcome, a promotion, a stronger body, a growing business, financial freedom, recognition, influence, accomplishment. Those things are not the destination. They are the byproducts. The real achievement is becoming the kind of person capable of creating those outcomes repeatedly. Because outcomes come and go. Identity remains. Money can disappear. Skills remain. A title can be taken away. Character remains. Applause eventually fades. Discipline remains. That is why this final chapter is not asking you to accomplish something new. It is asking you to become someone new. Not tomorrow. Today. You have a choice. You can spend your life chasing success, or you can become the kind of person success naturally follows. Always choose the second path. Because chasing success creates anxiety. Building character creates certainty. Chasing success makes you dependent on outcomes. Building identity makes outcomes inevitable. The strongest people no longer wake up wondering whether they should be disciplined. They wake up knowing who they are. That decision has already been made. Every action simply confirms it. Discipline is who I am. Say it. Discipline is who I am. Again. Discipline is who I am. Notice how different that statement feels from saying, I hope I become disciplined. Hope waits. Identity acts. Hope negotiates. Identity commits. Hope depends on circumstances. Identity creates circumstances. That is the transformation this book has been guiding you toward from the very first chapter. You no longer wait for motivation. You no longer depend on excitement. You no longer measure yourself by one good day or one bad day. You measure yourself by what you repeatedly become. That changes everything. Look back at every lesson you have learned. You stopped waiting for dramatic breakthroughs. You learned to win today's small decisions. You understood that habits never stop growing. You became someone who keeps promises. You protected your future from today's comfort. You replaced motivation with consistency. You mastered invisible days. You built an identity that compounds. You refused to quit one ordinary day too soon. None of these lessons stand alone. Together, they form one person, a disciplined person, a reliable person, a resilient person, a trustworthy person, a patient person, a consistent person. That person is your future, not because someone gives it to you, because you build it. One ordinary day at a time. That's the key. Many people spend years searching for the secret to greatness. There is no secret. There is only repetition. There is only consistency. There is only the willingness to continue after the excitement disappears. Greatness has never been mysterious. It has always been repetitive. Think about the greatest bridge ever built. It was not completed with one giant movement. It was assembled piece by piece, beam by beam, bolt by bolt, day by day. Imagine if the builders had quit because one day's progress seemed insignificant. The bridge would never exist. Your future works the same way. Every disciplined action becomes another beam supporting the life you're creating. Every promise kept strengthens the structure. Every difficult choice reinforces the foundation. Nothing is wasted. Nothing is meaningless. Every day builds the next. Repeat it. Every day builds the next. One disciplined morning makes tomorrow's discipline easier. One completed project strengthens your confidence for the next challenge. One courageous conversation prepares you for a more difficult one. One healthy meal encourages another. One wise financial decision creates another opportunity. Everything connects. Everything compounds. This is why extraordinary performance is overrated. Anyone can have one extraordinary day. Many people experience moments of brilliance. Few become consistently excellent. The world remembers champions. Champions remember routines. The world celebrates victories. Victorious people remember preparation. The world notices breakthroughs. Disciplined people remember repetition. That is where greatness is born. Not in moments, in patterns. Patterns become habits. Habits become character. Character becomes destiny. You have a choice. Live for moments, or live by principles. Moments disappear. Principles remain. One inspired weekend cannot replace one disciplined year. One motivational speech cannot replace 1,000 disciplined mornings. One emotional decision cannot replace one consistent lifestyle. This is why your ordinary days matter more than your extraordinary ones. Ordinary days happen most often. Therefore, they shape you the most. Protect them. Respect them. Use them well. Remember something important. Every person is experiencing the compound effect. Not only disciplined people. The person who constantly delays is compounding delay. The person who complains daily is compounding negativity. The person who avoids responsibility is compounding weakness. Nobody escapes this law. The only question is whether the compound effect is creating the future you actually want. Life is always multiplying something. You decide what it multiplies. That's the key. Imagine meeting yourself 10 years from now. Two different versions stand before you. The first version honored daily discipline. They protected their mornings. They exercised consistently. They learned continuously. They invested wisely. They kept promises. They chose courage over comfort. Their eyes are calm. Their posture is confident. Their life reflects thousands of disciplined decisions. The second version chose convenience. They delayed. They complained. They waited. They blamed circumstances. They abandoned routines whenever emotions changed. Their regrets are heavy, not because life treated them unfairly, because they repeatedly abandoned themselves. Now ask yourself one question. Which version are you building today? Not someday, today. Because tomorrow's identity is already under construction. One decision at a time. The future is never created all at once. It arrives disguised as today's habits. That realization changes everything. You stop searching for shortcuts. You stop hoping for miracles. You stop envying other people. Instead, you quietly return to today's work. Again, and again, and again. Because you understand something powerful. Today's repetition is tomorrow's reality. That understanding creates peace. You no longer panic because results have not yet appeared. You trust the process. You understand the mathematics of growth. You know that roots come before branches. Foundations come before buildings. Preparation comes before opportunity. Character comes before success. Always. You have a choice. Respect the process, or fight it. The process always wins, so let it work for you, not against you. Remember that the compound effect never sleeps. It never pauses. It never asks whether you feel ready. Every day it quietly records your decisions. Every action enters the account. Every excuse enters the account. Every courageous decision enters the account. Every distraction enters the account. Nothing disappears. Everything accumulates. That truth should not frighten you. It should empower you. Because it means every good decision matters. Every improvement matters. Every restart matters. You are never too late. As long as today exists, another investment can be made. Another habit can be strengthened. Another promise can be kept. Another brick can be laid. Another vote can be cast for the person you are becoming. Never underestimate today's opportunity. It may appear ordinary. It never is. Today is where futures are built. Today is where identities are formed. Today is where destinies quietly begin. That is why discipline is never punishment. Discipline is self-respect in action. Discipline is believing that your future deserves today's effort. Discipline is choosing long-term freedom over short-term comfort. Discipline is an act of faith. Faith that today's invisible effort will eventually become tomorrow's visible reward. Now, there is only one responsibility left. Protect what you have built. Protect your habits. Protect your standards. Protect your integrity. Protect your routines. Protect your future. Do not become careless simply because progress has appeared. The compound effect never stops. Continue making deposits. Continue choosing wisely. Continue becoming stronger. Continue showing up. Continue keeping your word. Continue living your identity. And when life becomes difficult, as it inevitably will, return to the simplest truths you have learned. Win today's small decisions. Keep your promises. Choose discipline over comfort. Trust the process. Stay in the game. Become before you achieve. Those principles will guide you through every season of your life. Because principles outlast emotions. Character outlasts circumstances. Discipline outlasts talent. That is why disciplined people remain standing long after others have disappeared. Remember these final words: discipline is who I am. Every day builds the next. And finally, choose wisely. Repeat daily. Again, choose wisely. Repeat daily. Your future is not waiting for permission. It is waiting for repetition. Not one perfect decision. One disciplined decision. Repeated. Tomorrow. The day after. Next month. Next year. For the rest of your life. That is how ordinary people become extraordinary. That is how impossible dreams become inevitable realities. That is how identities become destinies. And that is how you stop chasing the compound effect, because you become the compound effect itself. Everything you've heard comes down to one truth. Your future is not waiting somewhere ahead of you. It is being built right now by what you repeatedly do today. Every disciplined decision strengthens you. Every excuse weakens you. Every promise you keep changes your identity. Every small habit compounds into a life you will eventually have to live. Stop searching for dramatic transformation. Start protecting ordinary days. Stop waiting for motivation. Build discipline instead. Stop measuring today's results. Measure today's choices. Remember this every morning. Small actions become massive outcomes. Consistency always wins. The future is already under construction. Now the question is simple. When tomorrow arrives, will you repeat the habits that created your old life? Or will today become the first brick in an entirely new one? The choice is yours. Start now. Continue tomorrow. Never break the chain.